Spirituality takes center stage every weeknight at 11:30 p.m. Eastern. Mondays, Chris Stefanik introduces you to ordinary people living extraordinary faith on Real Life Catholic. Tuesdays, Jason Craig leads you through the stages of initiation into manhood in Rites of Passage, leaving boyhood behind. Former NFL great Danny Abramowitz and his Catholic coaching staff get souls ready for the big game every Wednesday on Crossing the Goal. Thursdays, join Doug Barry as he prepares for spiritual warfare on Battle Ready. Every Friday, discover true masculine spirituality on Long Ride Home with Bear Wozniak. Whether a husband, father, son, worker, or leader, God is calling all men to step out in faith and play your part on His team. Weeknights at 11:30 p.m. Eastern here on EWTN.
I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, strengthening ties. President Joe Biden welcomes the Prime Minister of India to the White House. We have a report. Life and dignity. The U.S. bishops mark today as the beginning of Religious Freedom Week. We'll explain. The new fight. A former NFL star shares his pro-life perspective and what's next for the movement. And out of this world. Words from Pope Francis are launched into space. We're at the Vatican. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the feast of St. Thomas More and St. John Fisher. Our top story tonight, President Joe Biden welcomed India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi in an elaborate state visit to the White House today. Several major deals announced, including in defense and chip manufacturing. But human rights advocates are questioning the decision to offer the high honor to a leader whose 9-year tenure has been marked by a backslide in political, religious, and press freedoms. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, on the South Lawn of the White House this morning, both President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Narendra Modi discussed the importance of democracy and democratic values. While back in India, religious minorities, including Christians, are suffering persecution. The White House welcomes the Prime Minister of India for an official state visit.
Prime Minister Modi, welcome back to the White House.
The two countries are wrestling with major international issues, including the response to the war in Ukraine and growing threats from China.
The challenges and opportunities facing the world in this century require that India and the United States work and lead together, and we are.
But one of the key topics and criticisms facing India is the Hindu country's treatment of religious minorities, including Muslims and Christians.
Equity under the law, freedom of expression, religious pluralism, and diversity of our people. These core principles have endured and evolved even as they have faced challenges throughout each of our nation's histories.
Human rights also came up when the two leaders met in the Oval Office.
I look forward to discussing how we can strengthen our partnership and build a future together worthy of both our peoples, one grounded on democracy, human rights, freedom, and the rule of law.
Later, President Biden and Prime Minister Modi spoke to the press.
And to cherish freedom and celebrate the democratic values of universal human rights, which face challenges around the world and in each of our countries, but which remain so vital to the success of each of our nations.
Now, Christians and other religious minorities in India face things like hate speech, mob attacks, anti-conversion laws, and more. And at a news conference today, a reporter pressed Prime Minister Modi on human rights concerns. Modi defended India by saying democracy runs in our veins and adding there's absolutely no space for discrimination. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
Could yet another threat of a government shutdown be on the horizon? Well, Congress must pass the new 2024 budget by October 1st, but a fight is already brewing over how much money is going to be spent. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has the latest.
Lately, Congress has turned its attention to investigations, nomination fights, and even impeachments. But there is a major battle between the parties over the amount of money the government is going to spend next year. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy says that he wants significant cuts, turning the budget back to 2022 levels, which many Republicans support.
He just committed to us that he would forge ahead with a conservative, a fiscally conservative agenda. And he gave us his word.
A new proposal from a group of 176 House Republicans would bring significant cuts, raising the retirement age for Social Security and Medicare, ban free school meals for students, cut spending on food aid, and weaken environmental protections of the Biden administration.
Their economic agenda has nothing to do with the health, the safety, and the economic well-being of everyday Americans, and has everything to do with the wealthy, the well-off, the well-connected, and their right-wing extreme ideology.
Meanwhile, in the Senate, Democrats and even some Republicans are fuming over the steep cuts proposed by the House GOP members. They want the budget to reflect the debt limit deal made between the Speaker and the President.
I think the Senate, I hope the Senate on a bipartisan basis will stand by the agreement that was reached with the President. I'm sorry that the House has taken a different tack.
Senate Minority Whip John Thune tells me the ultimate goal is to reduce government spending and the more than $32 trillion national debt.
This is all about, in Washington, bending the curve in the right direction. And this is bending it back toward less spending instead of the ramp up in spending that we've had now for the past 2 years under total Democrat control.
Right now, the Senate Appropriations Committee is marking up its version of the 2024 budget, which is bound to be a lot higher than the House's version, setting up a showdown come the fall. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, the House voted yesterday to censure Representative Adam Schiff.
That the House of Representatives censures Adam Schiff, representative of the 30th Congressional District of California.
Schiff becomes the 25th House lawmaker to be censured. The move comes due to comments that he made several years ago about investigations into alleged collusion between former President Donald Trump and Russia. Schiff is running for the U.S. Senate in his home state of California. Well, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops are inviting the faithful to pray, act, and reflect during Religious Freedom Week. This year's theme, titled Life and Dignity for All, promotes a culture of life. It advocates for not only the Catholic faith, but also the freedom to worship for all religions. Each day is dedicated to a specific cause. Today, the faithful are invited to pray for the respect of sacred spaces. And we are inching closer to the end of this Supreme Court term, and that means decision days are upon us. And there are several high-stakes religious liberty cases awaiting rulings. Joining us now is Andrea Picciotti-Bayer, EWTN News Legal Analyst. Andrea, always so great to be with you. As we know, the Supreme Court handed down 4 decisions today. Talk to us about those decisions and the takeaways.
Well, you know, Tracy, it's very interesting. At the end of the Supreme Court's term, court watchers are on, the edge of their seat. And today was no different. The 4 cases are all very interesting, but it's what's to come that really is interesting me. And that's those big religious freedom cases that we expect maybe will come down tomorrow or next week. One involves the Sabbatarian Christian mailman who is asking for his federal statutory rights to be accommodated and not have to work on Sundays, even though the U.S. Postal Service now has a deal with Amazon to deliver packages on Sundays. And the other is a case that I've been watching for several years now, Tracy, and that involves the free speech rights of a Colorado website designer who wants to be able to design wedding websites for only weddings between a man and a woman, and whether or not a Colorado law is going to force her against her speech rights under the First Amendment to design websites for same-sex marriages. Those are probably going to come down maybe tomorrow or sometime next week, and those are very significant for religious freedom interests.
Andrea, any sense of how they may rule on those cases?
You know, Tracy, it's always hard to read the tea leaves, but having listened to the very long arguments in both of those cases, I think that the court is going to continue to be very pro-religious freedom, very pro-free speech. And again, this is consistent with Title VII in the case of the mailman. The statutory language requires covered employees to accommodate religious practices of their employees, and our great tradition of free speech that guards against the government, whether it be the federal government or state or local government, forcing Americans to speak against their will or forcing them to say things that they don't agree with.
Andrea, I'm going to switch gears here. Yesterday, the Biden administration declined to appeal a federal court ruling that stops the government from forcing religious doctors and hospitals to perform gender transition procedures against their conscience. What more can you tell us about this and the impact that this may have on conscience protections and also Catholic hospitals?
You know, Tracy, it's an amazing case. This is, again, another victory by Becket Law, those great religious freedom lawyers that have represented groups like the Little Sisters of the Poor or Catholic Social Services in Philadelphia. They had a huge victory in the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Biden administration, I think, sensing defeat, refused to seek review by the Supreme Court. They let the deadline pass. Earlier in this year, they also let a similar case out of the Fifth Circuit, that deadline pass. And so this is a really important wake-up call to all Americans that it's important to stand up for religious freedom, whether it's in the healthcare setting, which seems to be the area in which most often conscience rights are being trampled upon. But it's also a reminder to the Biden administration that these sacred rights, both for doctors, for Catholic hospitals, are ones that are going to be protected in the courts, and try as they might, the judiciary is there to safeguard our hospitals, especially Catholic hospitals, which serve such an important role in America's healthcare.
Yeah, and we also mentioned earlier, Andrea, if you can touch on this for us, that today begins Religious Freedom Week. Talk to us more about the occasion and also the special daily request from the USCCB.
You know, I think it's very fitting. As you mentioned earlier in our talk, this week starts off at the feast of St. Thomas More and John Fisher. It's a really big, important reminder that the Catholic Church has stood up for religious freedom and that we have incredible saints to point to, both these two saints as well as martyrs. Each day is an important reflection, both for religious freedom here at home and also abroad. And I'm very touched that the church and our bishops have pointed out and asked us to pray specifically on days for our brothers and sisters in the faith in Nicaragua and in Nigeria. The assault against Christians in particular and Catholics in Nicaragua has been just atrocious. And we know the power of prayer. We know that it's important to pray, to reflect, and to act. And whatever resources you have to be able to contribute to the defense of the faith and religious freedom here at home, but at abroad, please think about considering supporting these organizations, whether they're legal organizations or advocacy, care. One of the days during this week is also for service that we give to immigrants and refugees, that we can do that as a church and as individual believers at this time of great human suffering.
Andrea, thank you so much for being with us today and all of your insights. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Tracy. Have a good one.
Russian officials are saying a bridge between Crimea and Ukraine was damaged today in an explosion. The bridge is a main connection for supplies to Russian forces in the Kherson region in Ukraine. They are claiming the blast was caused by a British Storm Shadow missile. Local officials said the damage is not severe and workers are aiming to repair it in several days. Well, we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including the fight for life, how a former NFL athlete is advocating for the unborn, and out to launch, Pope Francis releases words of hope out into the atmosphere.
Hello, family. EWTN came from very humble beginnings. When she started, Mother Angelica had $200 and a garage-turned studio. In founding EWTN, Mother stepped out in complete trust in the Lord. She counted on faithful viewers like you, our EWTN family, to provide the funding that she needed. Through the years, with God's grace, EWTN has grown. Instead of reaching a few thousand viewers, we now reach over 400 million television homes. Our faith-filled Catholic programs tell the nations about the love of Jesus. But we need your help to continue this work of evangelization. Today, will you step forward and contribute to our annual Eternal Word campaign? With your gift, you'll help a widow who needs comfort, guide a child preparing for the sacraments, and inspire a fallen-away Catholic to come back into the Church. You'll also help those who are homebound to view the Mass. That's why I'm asking you today to make a gift. Will you please answer the call to proclaim God's eternal word? I hope you will.
EWTN is 100% viewer supported. Your gift today keeps EWTN on the air and shares the joy of the gospel with the world. Please make a gift today by going to EWTN.com/eternalword. You may also call us at 1-800-447-EWTN or send your donation to EWTN 5817 Old Leeds Road, Irondale, Alabama 35210.
Under the guidance of our Lord's earthly Father, young men discerning for the priesthood journey to Knock Shrine in Ireland, pray for these future leaders of the Church in a pilgrimage Mass for the St. Joseph's Young Priest Society, Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern on EWTN.
Tennessee is under investigation for possible medical billing fraud. The center confirmed earlier this week that they had been providing transgender patient records to the Attorney General's office. The state's AG is saying the records are part of the investigation. Well, state lawmakers in New York have approved a pro-abortion bill protecting doctors who send abortion drugs across state lines. If approved, women nationwide will be able to receive chemical abortion drugs faster. Catholic leaders in the state oppose the measure. Saturday marks the one-year anniversary of the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And a new book by a pro-life advocate and former NFL player examines what comes next. In the new fight for life, Roe race, and a pro-life commitment to justice, Benjamin Watson writes in part, quote, "Now is not the time for extremism, for focusing on one side and one side alone. What we need is to come together in humility to honor, protect, and ensure the best possible life for both mother and child. We still have a lot of work to do." And we go now to the author of that book, Benjamin Watson, former NFL player and vice president of strategic relationships with Human Coalition, a pro-life group that's based in Dallas. Ben, great to have you with us today, and congratulations on the book.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you.
Well, we have a lot to discuss, but first, I'm curious, what inspired you and really made you write this book? And also, your book begins really almost a year ago with the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Tell us what went through your mind that day and why you started the book there.
Well, I think what inspired me, honestly, was just knowing that we were at a seminal moment in not only American history, but when it comes to pro-life advocacy. And if I think back a year ago, Saturday to June 24th, 2022, and where we all were, I had feelings of joy, of great emotion. And I thought about the 50 plus years of pro-life work that so many people in different sectors across faith traditions have done. But I also felt a little bit of worry or trepidation, knowing that the next year would be something that would be totally different from what we were used to from a pro-life perspective. And so I wrote the book to cast a vision. I believe we're in a new fight for life. This time period doesn't look like it did before Roe was overturned, but it's imperative that people who love life, who want to serve both women and children, and who want to dig into some of the systemic, perhaps, factors that may make certain women vulnerable. Now is a time not for us to shrink back and think that this is over, but really to re-engineer and to reimagine what it looks like, and to keep that same energy and take it up a notch. Because quite honestly, even though Roe was overturned, there are still women who feel like abortion is a necessary and needed option for them.
Yeah, and as we mentioned that excerpt from your book earlier, you said there's still a lot of work that needs to be done by the pro-life movement. It really is a theme throughout your book. Can you talk about what kind of work you think pro-lifers should be doing? What should they be focused on now, that Roe has been overturned?
Well, as many of the things that pro-lifers have been doing, there's an idea out there that pro-lifers only care about children in the womb, and we know that not to be true. It may be for some, but not for most of the people that I've encountered. But there's an individual responsibility. What are we doing with our own personal resources? How are we serving? There's pregnancy resource centers, 2,700 of them around the nation, that are serving women and connecting them with educational opportunities or whatever their needs may be, material or physical or spiritual needs. But then on a legislative level, state by state, the different states are making different laws, and we need to be vigilant in how we vote and the things that we're aware of. And we also need to, on a church level or a faith level, understand how we speak about things like marriage, how we speak about sex to our children, if we're even talking about those sorts of things. There are so many different ways and different facets of this. It's more than simply saying, don't abort your child, although we believe that full stop 100%. There are also all these other connecting points and avenues. And, I even talk in the book a lot about social justice, because even my work in racial justice coincides with some of the statistics that we see with abortion and how the two are connected inextricably to one another.
Yeah, and I want to mention this, too. In one part of your book, you say that the pro-life movement could even learn something from six-time Super Bowl champion coach Bill Belichick with the New England Patriots. What did you mean by that?
Well, I had to throw some football analogies into the book because football has been such a huge part of my life. But one thing Coach Belichick always told us was, do your job. He always said, do your job and do it well. And the other thing he did was he held us to a very high standard. He never sugarcoated anything. And the do your job part is, there are so many people that would consider themselves to be pro-life that are attorneys, that are in medicine, perhaps they're in faith, they're educators, they're moms, they're dads, they're lay people, or they're clergy. And we all can contribute something. We all can do something, but also something that Coach Belichick talked about, and I think I mentioned this in the book as well, is he never really sugarcoated things. And the fact of the matter is that 76% of abortion-determined women say they would prefer to parent if their circumstances were different. And we also know that right now, 74% of America, approximately, still has very, very legal abortion. And I think I heard you mention this earlier when we were coming on. The abortion pill is at 50% and is approaching 60 and perhaps 70 or 80 in the coming years. And so the truth of the matter is there is much work to be done. There is a new fight for life. And my hope is that the pro-life movement understand that now presents a great opportunity to keep going and also to expand and create even more allies for the fight.
Ben, we have probably a little bit less than a minute left, but really quickly, where can folks get the book? And also, what's next for you?
Folks can get the book anywhere books are sold, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, wherever. Tyndale Publishers, you can go on their site as well. And there's also an audiobook. I actually narrated the audiobook. My wife told me I needed to do it. It was a grind. But if you like my voice, get the audiobook. If you don't like my voice, then just get the paperback or the hardback. And what's next for me? I've been doing some press around the book, but I work for an organization, as you mentioned, Human Coalition, and I will continue to work with them in the pro-life movement. And college football is around the corner, so it's about time to start talking some SEC football for my job as a broadcaster.
All right, we love it, Ben. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it. Congratulations on the book, and God bless you, and thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, words of hope, how encouragement from Pope Francis has been sent out into space. Plus, a grand discovery, a centuries-old church rises up from the waters in Mexico.
A special item on EWTNRC.com this month is the Jesus Knocking framed art. Designed exclusively for EWTN, this wonderful image of Jesus at the doorway of our hearts comes in a cream-colored 10.5 by 12.5 inch oak frame with glass. As the church honors Jesus throughout the month, it's a beautiful reminder of his love for us. To order, go to EWTNRC.com and search for item number 3037D.
Get instant access anywhere, anytime to the best in Catholic TV programming with EWTN On Demand.
Hey, don't forget, EWTN's bookmark is now on demand.
Huh? Hey, Doug, don't forget about our show, Father Spitzer's Universe. It's completely on demand.
Huh? For me, you get 2 for 1. Scripture and tradition, and EWTN Live.
Hey, remember, you're always at home with us.
Hey, you want to live right? The doctor is in. Anytime, anywhere.
Wait, Life on the Rock is on demand too.
You can take your journey anytime.
And don't forget about all of those grace-filled women.
Right! Hey, no one has more hours of Catholic programming on demand than EWTN. Just go to EWTN.com/on-demand. There's nothing to fill out, no membership required. All you need is an internet connection and you're good to go.
Come on over and bring a friend.
We've got hundreds of shows.
EWTN On Demand. Not only are these programs in demand, the hosts can be pretty demanding too.
Please, watch.
Go to EWTN.com/on-demand or download the free EWTN app and watch on Roku, Apple TV, Google TV, and Amazon Fire TV.
Pope Francis is advancing the cause for sainthood for 2 religious sisters, including one who lived in Baltimore and another who witnessed the miracles at Fatima. Mother Mary Elizabeth Lang founded the country's first African-American religious congregation in the 1800s in Maryland, while Sister Lucia was the eldest child to witness the Fatima apparitions. Both have been advanced to venerable, and both need 1 miracle discovered and approved before they are beatified. Well, the Holy Father says that he is still feeling short of breath following his abdominal surgery 2 weeks ago. During an event at the Vatican today, Pope Francis said that he is still feeling the effects of the anesthesia. He was expected to deliver remarks to a group of charity workers, but instead decided to hand out his speech. Medical experts are urging the Holy Father to, quote, take it easy. A rocket carrying a satellite with a tiny nanobook took off from California earlier this month. It contains words of hope by Pope Francis and promotes global unity. The message comes from the Holy Father's 2020 prayer service held in an empty St. Peter's Square during the height of the pandemic. EWTN Vatican journalist Matteo Ciofi has more.
A satellite carrying the nanobook with the words by Pope Francis has departed from California's Vandenberg Air Force Base. This mission, called Space Atelles, which means Guardian of Hope, has successfully launched, and in the coming days it plans to deploy the CubeSat into orbit, carrying Pope Francis' message of hope, contained in the nanobook titled "Why Are You Afraid? Do You Still Have No Faith?" Coordinating the Space Atelles mission, at the urging of the Holy See Dicastery for Communication, is the Italian Space Agency in collaboration with the Polytechnic University of Turin, where researchers and students have built the CubeSat 3U. Although small in size, the satellite, whose high-tech systems were blessed by Pope Francis last March 29th, and the nanobook carry great significance. The name and the logo of the space mission itself reflect the desire to inspire hope, creating a symbol in the sky to promote fraternity and sharing on Earth, the driving forces behind all possible hope. This initiative symbolized the Pope's message from March 27, 2020, when the Statio Orbis in St. Peter's Square encouraged the world to have hope. The entire mission, according to the official website of Space Atelles, is a strong, evocative, universal, engaging gesture that calls humanity to hope, and the need for it to be cultivated with concrete, material, or spiritual gestures such as the one performed by the Pope in that empty square. It is also a testimony to how fruitful the relationship between science, technology, and faith can be, as well as a message of inclusiveness, given the numbers of people, especially young people, who collaborated in many ways with the Pope on the project. The mission responds to the need for a strong call in times of war, for a sign for peace, for brotherhood, for sharing. Pope Francis' message in space is a sign, an image of tenderness and blessing for the world, explained Monsignor Lucio Adrian Ruiz, Secretary of the Dicastery for Communication and creator of the Space Ateles project. The immensity of space always makes us dream, and today we all need to dream together again, he said, with the hope that peace will return to the world by engaging all of us. In Rome, Matteo Ciofi, EWTN News Nightly.
Finally tonight, a centuries-old church has been uncovered in Mexico due to an intense drought. The church dedicated to the Apostle James the Greater was flooded in the 60s after the construction of a nearby dam. Recently, the upper part of the church could only be seen above the waves, and now tourists can view the beautiful 16th century structure in its entirety. That is incredible. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sable. Good night, and God bless.
Hi, I'm Doug Keck, inviting you to join me for a great interview with Dr. Ray Guarendi about his latest book, Simple Steps to a Stronger Marriage.
It changed your relationship. That's kind of the theme of the book. And the irony, Doug, is we don't do them. That's the irony. They're so simple, they're so easy, but we resist.
The one and only Dr.